Alright, so let's learn how to make a hard trap beat, and let's just get straight into the project. Alright, so here's the project. This is the project for an upcoming release I'm super excited about. Stay tuned for that. I cannot wait to get that out. But we're just gonna get straight into it. So to start off with the melodies. So the melody consists of a sample and one quick little patch. So a quick little patch plus, a little add-on. But the sample sounds like this. So that's what it sounds like normally without any, EQing, mixing, or any post-processing done to it. Then I put it on the mixer track and I just EQ'd it a bit. I'm not going to show any of the EQing or mastering or anything like that in the video. But if you do want to see a more in-depth tutorial on how to actually go through and do all your samples, EQ all your sounds and everything like that, definitely let me know down in the comments below, and I'm down to do that. The one thing I did add that I'm going to show is I added a quick noise gate filter that's modulating very fast, so the volume of the sound is pretty much going like that, so it sounds as if it's quickly turning on and off. Here's what that effect sounds like. Once I cut up the sample a little bit, pitched it down, and added this over it with all the EQing, it sounds like this. That's what that sounds like. Sounds really cool. I use that on a lot of my tracks. It's just, my go-to whenever I load a sample, and it's usually to go through, adding a filter like that or a noise gate like that. It sounds really good. But yeah, now let's just get straight onto the, main sound that's layered on top of this sample, which is actually, I believe, an Omnisphere. It's as Serum, so I made this patch inside of Serum. Here's the quick patch if you want to see what it looks like. I'm not gonna go through in depth on how I made this sound, but if you want to see what this sound sounds like and you like it, that's what it sounds like. There's more post-processing done to it to make it, sound a little bit different, but this basis sound, and here's what it sounds like. That's what that sounds like. There's a lot of reverb on it, as you can tell, but I like that sound. It sounds dark and really open. So here's what that melody looks like, and it's pretty simple. It's sort of an ARPy style melody. It's just there to connect with the sample and sort of make it bigger. But here's that. All right, next thing we're going on to is the Reese bass, or drone bass, whatever you want to call it. Alright, so that's the Reese melody. Really like that one. That sounds really good. Once you combine them all together, it really makes it sound, big and tight. So something I like to do to my Reese basses is I like to actually add a crusher, a bit crusher, and just, smooth it out and only mix it in a little bit, so it's not really fully there, or else it would sort of sound something like this, which sounds like that. Sounds like that. It's sort of painful, you don't particularly like that sound. But if you calm it down a bit, sound really good, and it just adds, that sort of extra frequency that just sounds really nice in my opinion. So here's what it's like on and off. You can see that it really adds, it really sounds good. So all together, with all the melodies and that Reese bass, it sounds like this. So that's what that sounds like all together. It sounds really good. It sounds really dark, it sounds really big and open. I really like it. The next thing we're gonna look at is the bass. So there's a lot of bass melodies going on through this track, I like to make my 808s, a little bit crazy because that's the style I go for. So I'm not really going to go in depth that much on, every single 808 riff within this song because there's quite a lot of them and there's quite a lot of little changes, but I'll show you the sort of main idea of what I was going for. So the 808 riff is actually a layered 808. So for this song, I took an 808 and I EQ'd a lot of the highs frequencies out of it, and I kept the lows, and I kept it pretty bass processed. And then on top of that, I added another 808 where I actually put a guitar, amp sim over it, a Neural DSP, if you want to check it out. It's a great guitar amp sim, but I put that over it, and I took out the lows of that one. So when you combine them together, you get the lows without sort of any, post-processing in it or distortion, because that's sort of what an amp sim does. And then you also get the highs with the distortion. It sounds really good. So here's the melody with just the low 808 in right now, and then I'll show you what it sounds like combined. That's the first 808 riff in this track, and that's just with the low end. You can tell that there's still distortion because the bass 808 sound that I was using, bass sample was already distortion on it. Then I took that into the Neural DSP amp sim, which looks like that, and I added a bunch of distortion. Basically, I just took a guitar preset that I used and I just put it on my 808. And then I also, EQ'd. I did some stereo enhancing and imaging, get that sound to sound a bit more wide, because I really like that sound when the 808 sort of spread out between the speakers instead of it being very mono. I like it being wide. So together with both of it, here's what it sounds like with the 808 with the amp sim. Sounds like this. So that's what that sounds like. You can tell there's like no lows, that EQ'd all the lows out of it, so it's just highs, and it's also pretty low in the mix, so it's not that noticeable, but it makes a difference when you listen to it with a full track. So together they sound like this. So that's what that 808 riff sounds like with both of them together. You can tell that once you combine them both, they really make a bigger sound, and layering them, it's a style I tend to like, so I do it. Anyways, for the next riffs, I'm not going to show the difference between both 808s. I'm just going to show the main riffs. And as you could tell, when I was playing this the second time, there were pauses, which I'll talk about once we get to the sort of the drum part of this video. I'll talk about why there are pauses. I like to make pauses and then add drum fills. I'll talk about that later on. Anyway, for the next 808 riff, it looks like this. Crazy, you can tell there's lots of sliding going on. That's the second 808 riff in this track. As you could tell, there are lots of slides. If you don't know what a slide is, it's when I guess it's pretty easy to explain, but it's basically when you just take the 808 from one note and slide it up to the next one. But for sort of the trap style of music, it's pretty quick. So you like to make really fast slides, and to fast sliding, so without any of these notes, it would just sound like this, right? And then you add the slides, and you get a nice slide. And then you can, if you want, in other styles, you can make them longer. It sounds like it's going up. You can tell these are all slides. So that's a good way to get very trappy style 808s, is adding those crazy slides. However, you don't want to be too crazy with them, because then it can just sound stupid. Easiest way to put it, if you just start placing random notes, it'll sound pretty stupid. You want to place them properly. You want to make sure they're on tune, obviously, but you want to be crazy with them because that's the style, but you don't want to be too crazy with them. That makes sense. Yeah, so these are the slides. The easiest way to do a slide, if you don't know, I'm not going to go into an in-depth tutorial on how to do 808 slides in this video, but if you want to see that, again, let me know down below. But it's place a note, make it short like this, double click it, press that, and press accept. Boom, got an 808 slide. And another thing you want to do is make sure that your 808, you don't have to do this, sometimes I don't because I like the style of it without, but turn all of these down in the envelope section and just turn on hold. It makes it so that if your note isn't being held in the track in the piano roll, it won't play. So if you can tell, if I put the note to there, it'll stop right there. It stops. So that's something you want to do. It makes the slides choppier and tighter instead of them, sustaining onto the next note. So sometimes on slides, it sounds cool to take the slide and move it from right to left or left to right, whatever you think sounds good. It gives you a cool effect. So with the stereo panning on, you can tell the 808 sounds like this on a slide. You can see that slide went from left to right. It sounds pretty cool. It's just a style, a cool effect. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. Depends how I'm feeling. All right. So now I'm just gonna quickly go through the last two 808 melodies. Just gonna show them what. Wow, I can't speak. Just gonna show what they sound like. Not gonna go into depth with them because tons of them. But here's the last two 808 melodies and what they sound like in this track. And again, this is just the same 808 from before for the second drop. Melody, 808 riff. So there's all the 808 melodies in this track. As you can tell, I like to use slides a lot. I think they sound really good. And you'll see later on, I like to use slides and then stop the 808 and everything happening right after it. Get a nice drum fill in. You'll see what I mean once we get into the drums. That's the next section. Let's do it. So for the drums, we're gonna start with the snare. Obviously, you gotta have a snare, you gotta have a kick, you gotta have your hi-hats. It's sort of a given in trap music now. But here's what the snare sounds like. So that's the snare. So I like to layer my snares. So I take a bunch of snares, put them together, boom, one big snare. So here are what all the snares sound like. We got this one. And together you get, ta-da. Again, there's EQing going on with this and some processing in the back end on the mixing side of things, but I'm not going to be going in depth in this video for that. So that's the snare. Pretty simple. Next, let's move on to some hi-hats. So as you can tell, I actually have 3 hi-hats going on. I just have a simple, really easy live hat loop going on like this. Pretty easy. To do that, you basically just, play the note on repeat, same note, and just take the velocity, with, which is pretty much just how hard the note is hit. So in terms, it's just sort of volume. Easiest way to explain it. It's how loud the volume, hits right when you hit it. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly, but easiest way to say is the lower the velocity, the quieter your sound's gonna be. Pretty much just volume. But to get the live hat, style, they're not always gonna be hitting the hat at the exact same volume. So I like to mix around with the velocities a bit and that sort of live sound. Another good way to get a live hat sound is go into whatever this section is called. Go into the time section, turn off full porta, and then bump up that shift, and it pretty much just offsets your notes a little bit, so it sounds more natural and real. There you go. Next is just going to be the normal hi-hats for the track, which are just 2 hi-hats layered together, which sound like this. So then again, so there's this hi-hat sound, and then I layered it with this hi-hat sound. Just a more natural sounding hi-hat. It makes it together when you layer the hi-hats, you get a really big sound. So as you can tell, a much bigger sound. So that's what those hi-hats sound like. Again, there's post-processing going on. I will show, however, I like to add a bit of an ozone imager, and this plugin is actually free if you want to check it out. It's a great plugin, and I highly suggest it. But pretty much, it makes it more. It adds width. It stereoizes your sound. So instead of you getting flat hi-hats that sound sort of mono and centered, it sort of stereos them and widens them and makes them sound a lot better in my opinion. All right, let's move on to the kick. So here's the kick that I used. Nice thumpy kick. I like that. I like my thumpy kicks. So something I actually did for this kick, which is very unorthodox, but again, it's music. So if it sounds good and you like the way it sounds, then you're doing something right. But I actually distorted the kick so that it would sound like this. Instead of, get those distorted sounds, which is actually very bad. And I'm not going to go in depth in this video, but it's very bad for your dynamic range. but it's sort of a give, like the style of music has sort of, you know, normalized that sort of distorted kick sound. So the easiest way to get a thumpy kick is by doing that, right? If it sounds good, who cares? It's not wrong if it sounds good. So there's that. Here's one of the kick melodies. Again, for all the different 808s, I like to change it. You know, I change my kick melodies up for them. So I'm not going to go through all the different kick melodies. However, in the final, you know, track, and once you hear the final track, you'll hear all the differences. You can tell that I added a reverse, a reverse kick in there, and it sort of gives you that, you know, big bass warp whoosh sound into it that I really like. And I put a lot of pauses, bring the kicks back in. It sounds really good. You can tell right here, it sounds like this. You know, it gives you that whoosh of bass, I guess. I pretty much on every single one of my tracks layer my kicks with a cymbal or a crash, because I find that it makes the kicks a lot more punchy. And it's just a style that I like, and I sort of just something I always do now. And so with a cymbal, which sounds like this, or a crash, it's sort of a crash, and you layer that with the kick, you get this. And you can tell those pauses are synced up with the snares. So, you know, the snare will hit and then everything will stop and then I'll continue going. I'll show you that later on once we get to what the final whole drum pattern sounds like altogether. So altogether, the drums sound like this. And you're gonna hear the pauses in this, and I'll show you what they sound like right after with the 808, and you'll see how they go hand in hand and they come together to make a crazy cool sound. And another thing I like to do is on those pauses is I like to put drum fills, because again, it just makes them sound even harder because everything stops instantly. Some 808 going, it sounds cool. Then you build the tension with the drum fill and all the drums come back in. So with some drum fills, I use a ton of drum fills in this track because I like drum fills. So here's what they sound like. We got that one. Got ones on the pre-drop, so right before that drop happens. So those are some of the drum fills I use, and now we can see what it sounds like with everything and all the 808s. So now you can see once you start putting all the little aspects, you know, the drums, the 808, the crashes, the fills, everything really comes together to make that full sound. The only other drums I added were I put the live hats here at the start and added a quick open hat and sort of a live open hat being played just for the build. But that's just a little aspect. He doesn't really need it. I just did it for fun. The last thing I think I'm going to talk about is some of the effects. So just like risers, basic, you know, some sounds, some rain, stuff like that. You know, those are what effects are. So we got some risers here like this. You like to, you know, you put these before a drop or whatever, it builds tension. Listeners can tell, oh, something's about to happen, it's about to drop, you know, we're starting to get up, building tension right before it hits. On the pauses again, where I put little like breaks where the drum stop and the 808 goes on, I like to put sometimes vocals, little effects, anything that you find sounds cool. Play around, see what sounds good. For this one, I put this one. I don't really know what it is, but you know, pitched it down a bit. It was actually pitched up. And then I add a little bit of reverb, add a little bit of delay, and again, ozone image it, just so it gets a bit more wide. You know, you stereoize it a bit instead of it being a mono sound. You have some risers like this. Kill Bill siren sounds pretty cool. You know, I think probably heard that before if you listen to this style of music. And then sometimes, you know, I like to layer my mid sections, or, you know, right when the main drop stops and you go into the break, add a little bit of, you know, background noise like rain, something like this, or vinyl scratches or stuff like that. Sounds very good. So that's pretty much every aspect for this track. The main melodies, you know, they come up within the drop sometimes during the pauses. You know, and then here they come in again, you can tell, and then we go to the pause. And yeah, so some of the sample is extended a little bit over here. And for the main melody, again, there's also this one little sound I use later on, which is the exact same riff as this one, just on a different, a less wet patch with no reverb, so it sounds sort of dry. And I put that on a pause where all the drums stop to make it even more hard hitting. All right, so that's pretty much it. I really hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. I'm not the best at explaining things, so I'm sorry if I missed something or you don't understand. If you have any questions or anything, just let me know in the comments below and I'll definitely help. But I'm gonna play the full track right now. Again, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.